Alright, let's get started. So we're gonna go through how to make hair, and at the end there's gonna be a little bonus on how to model two more things. So how do you do hair? So hair is, when you're doing stylization like this, you use hair cards. So instead of actually modeling bits of hair, we're going to be using flat planes, which we're going to put images on using alphas in a way similar to how we do leaves. Now, to show you an example of how some of this might look, I'm going to show you this. So these are just individual cards, and this isn't finished. They can be curved and stuff to make them look more appropriate, but essentially this is just something that was painted in Photoshop and then brought back in here. And that's essentially what we're going to be doing for our characters. So let me open up our character again. So for this person, for this cow, we're gonna do a few cards. So I'm gonna do a tail one just as a test, even though we already have a little tail here. I'm also gonna do a little bit of like a little flip of hair here. I'm gonna hide this hat actually. Let's hide the hat. We don't need that right now. So I'm gonna do a bit of hair here. I'm gonna do maybe some here. I'll try and do something bigger as well. Maybe a beauty thing, and also let's hide this as well. Let's try doing some body hair as well. And the first thing I'm going to do for that is I'm actually going to go into Photoshop, and I'm going to do, I didn't draw this by the way, I'm going to do new, and I'm going to do it, I'm going to make a new image that's 1024 pixels by 1024 pixels, right? And we're going to get an image. The background I'm going to leave white, black, and on top of it I'm going to paint essentially what I want the hair to look like that I'm going to make. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to make it in separate sections, separate bits. So let me get my tablet working. Right, so I'm going to use basic brushes. I have some fancy brushes, but I'm going to use some basic brushes so you guys can relate to what's going on. And first I'm just going to do a simple test. I'm just going to think about the places I want to put this and how I want it to look. And it might be a good idea to look at the reference as well, which I don't have. I think I do have it here actually. There we go. Yeah, look at the reference and kind of how they do it. So they just, it's pretty basic shapes. It's a pretty basic shape. It's pretty much just kind of like something like this, right? So that's kind of what it is. So I think I'm going to like make a few that are different lengths. I'm just testing stuff out. I'm just like concepting, essentially trying to come up with an idea of how they're gonna look. So I could make an individual one, and I could make one that's kind of like a clump, and I could make one that's like a bigger clump. I could make one that's like a much bigger clump. Something like that. So that's kind of the furry bits. We could have clumps for the furry bits. The other bits for the tail, I think I won't do the tail because we have a tail from geometry. I don't think we need to make another one. What about for big bits of hair and stuff like that? So hair is one of the hardest things to get looking good in games, just because it's such an organic thing and there's so much of it that it's actually quite difficult to make good hair in games. Now depending on your character design, maybe you go for some cartoony stuff, maybe, so we can pretend this is like a face, maybe you go from some other stuff, but essentially what we're going to do is we're going to create clumps of hair and then place it on the character. So let me start then. Let me start drawing a few of these. Let's do like one big clump. Let's do like clump of two, and that's too big, so I'm gonna make them a bit smaller. We have a very large texture size here, 1024. Right. Something like that. And I'll just do some like stick out flicks as well, based on what we saw in the concept. This is again a little too big. this might look a little weird to you for now, and that's okay. As long as it makes sense after, it doesn't matter if it looks weird at the moment. Okay, let's stick with something like this then. Let's start with something like this. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to make another layer. I'm going to make this slightly less visible. And there's a few ways you could do it. Now you could use the pen tool, and you could draw really carefully how they're going to look, and I recommend that. You could just use the lasso tool, and you could like, not that lasso tool, the normal lasso tool, and you could like grab the space that way, and that's another way to do it. It's a little faster, it's a little more destructive because you don't get the control you get with the pen tool, and you don't get the super smooth lines you get with the pen tool, but it's another way to do it. And I am working with a tablet. It's not the best tablet, but it's all right. Kind of making some changes here as I draw it, and this one was bad, so let's right. So I think that the look is like get rid of these. The look is kind of you have a, let me just fill this first. Great. So I think the look is kind of like you have a bulge, and then that goes down into a flick, kind of like a mustache. If you imagine like a fancy mustache, right? It's like that, but it's just one-sided, and then you can add like off bits that look like hair that way. Yeah, you can do stuff like this. In fact, I kind of like this one. I might keep it. And let's go back here and move it. Which one should I replace? I think this big one looks pretty bad. Let's do this and delete her under one. Yeah. We'll merge this one down. Merge layers. Okay. And there's something else you could do as well. If you control click the square of the layer, it selects it all. Selects everything that's in that layer. So this is all that's in this layer, this white stuff. And I'm gonna make a new layer, hide this old stuff, and I'm gonna create a mask for it. So now it's gonna create a mask in that selection that I had. So it's gonna create a mask in these ones. Then on this layer that has the mask, I'm gonna fill it with white. So bucket tool, white. So now the layer is actually entirely white, but the mask, and I'm shift clicking the mask to toggle it on and off, is saying only here they will appear. And the reason I do this is because now I can click the mask, go to properties, and add a feather, and like feather it out so it's a little bit blurred. Now something else you can do is you can create a group, and I'm gonna drag this mask into the group actually, and then this white layer I'm gonna put inside the group. So everything inside this group is gonna only show up here. And this is really useful because you can now make a new layer inside the group, grab a color of whatever it is that you want to texture the cow like, and grab your painting brush. I'm going to use a soft round one. I have another one I want to use, but I'm going to use a soft round one so it's fair to people who don't have other brushes and things I want to use. And you can start like painting the actual look of the hair, right? And you might be like, hey, why don't you just fill it with a solid color first? That's a very good point. I probably could just fill it with a solid color first. And in fact, I'm gonna do that below. I'm just gonna fill it with like a dark brown. Then I'm gonna go back to my light brown and do something like this. And I'm gonna increase the hardness a little bit. And then I'm gonna grab a slightly darker color and I'm gonna put it on top. And I'm just gonna try and like, oh, that's not dark enough. Yeah, and I'm gonna try and like just emphasize some of these separations. Make this a little smaller, a little more hardness. There we go, that's what I want. This is kind of brush shape I want. So I'm kind of creating this fake ambient occlusion, which is like the shadowing you get in between two things that are almost touching or touching. So I'm creating these kind of like miniature shadows to emphasize the different shapes of the hair. And it's a little too strong in some areas, so I'm going to grab the soft brush again and just reduce it down, lightly pressing on the tablet, very lightly. And on top of this, you can use a smudge tool and just like smudge it a bit as well, but I'm just gonna reduce the opacity a little. And you could set it to an overlay as well if you want, and keep the opacity up, and that's gonna create like just a color variation. Now under this, so this is our like shad or like darken, and in between that I'm gonna have something like strands. So I'm gonna go back to this slightly harder brush that I started using here. Let me check what's happening. I want this, make sure it's working. Okay, and I'm going to lightly press on my brush to create these kind of like almost strokes of hair, because I have a hard enough brush that it actually kind of comes through like the shape a little bit, but it's not like super duper hard. So you can lightly create these strokes which are going to start overlaying with each other and creating a hair-like appearance. And this is me essentially hand painting the fur that I'm going to put on the character. Now this may be useful to do after you've actually figured out what your character's texture is going to be. So this might be something you can do after you texture your character. But you can still make all of this without the color before texturing your character. And you can even still like give this a go, because changing the color of this to match the character won't be difficult at all. All you need to do is this big group at the top. You just need to add a hue and saturation on top of it, and hold Alt to click the connection between the two to parent this to this, and then you can just change the color, the brightness, and all that stuff. So you can very easily adjust the color of this. So you could do it before texturing as well. So I've done this. You can see the before and after. It looks a bit like vanilla. I'm wondering what happens if I multiply or overlay. Just curious. And checking out. Sometimes I just check out the rest of these to see if it has an interesting effect. If it was a snowy cow, I would probably use something like that. Anyway, that's fine. I'm wondering, I kind of want to darken it a bit, so I'm going to actually add a brightness contrast. And I'm seeing whether I can darken it a little bit, not too much, by playing with the difference between the brightness and the contrast. And that's going to create a slightly darker look. I'm going to reduce that to about 50%. Yeah, that darkens it a bit, which is what I want. So we have this now. So what do you do? What do you do after you've painted this random fur here? Just thinking whether I could do something extra before. I'll do that after. I'll show you the extra bit after. Okay, so what do you do after you've painted this fur? We have our color here, right? We have this color. And if I get rid of the mask, you can see that this is what the color looks like without the mask. So you can take away the mask if you want, actually, and you can press Control Shift S, or just, you know, file save as, and you can save this as a targa, and you can call this hair cards color, right? I'm gonna put cow at the front because my desktop is very messy. Cow hair cards color. Click OK, and then we can unhide our mask by shift clicking it, and I'm going to hide the brightness contrast as well, and I'm gonna hide everything except the white, and I'm gonna save as again a targa, and I'm gonna call it cow hair cards alpha, right? And do that. I'll bring everything back now just so I know it's there, and of course I should have done this earlier, but I'm gonna save my scene as a Photoshop file and just call it cow hair cards, right? So we can minimize Photoshop now, and we can go back to Maya. So I'm going to make a plane now here like this, and then I'm going to reduce its resolution to nothing, and I'm going to give it a new texture. So I'm going to hold right click, I'm going to add assign favorite material, and I'm going to go to surface shader, which is something that you can use for stylized textures. And I'm going to go to the end of surface shader, and it has much fewer options, and I'm going to go to out color. I'm going to click the little checker, I'm going to click file, and then I'm going to click the folder icon. That's a bit confusing, I know, but then I'm going to find my color, and I'm going to add that. Now I'm going to click the little checkered sphere here, and that's going to turn on the textures for everything in the scene. And you can see that our color texture is now appearing on the plane. And the reason it's appearing on the plane perfectly is because the default plane has UVs perfectly in a square. So that's very useful for us. Now let's click this plane, and now go to out transparency and follow the same method and add our alpha. And now it's only gonna appear in this area. So what we can do now is we can duplicate this for as many pieces of hair as we have. So we have 5 on each sheet, and then using our multi-cut tool, we can literally cut this hair out. So I'm going to try and do it in a way that makes sense for, and I want to keep the resolution. Excuse me, that was not a pleasant noise, I apologize. I want to keep the resolution for these as it is, so I'm going to do this for this one here, and I'm going to just delete the other face and do this and make it go across, so we have something like this. So now it's kind of like the same way we did the leaf, remember? And then I'm going to add just a little bit more in here. So depending on how much hair you have, the more you have, the kind of more careful you got to be about resolution. This would be okay if I just had a few. If I had loads and loads and loads, I would probably keep it to like this much. So let's keep it at this for now, just as an example. And I would go through and do this for each of these. I would cut out each of these in a similar way. But now that we have this one, we can duplicate it, and we can just scale it down. We can put our pivot point to kind of where it needs to be in a way that makes sense. And we can kind of, let's say, put it on the side of our body, and it's kind of facing the wrong way. Let's object mode like this. Actually, let's keep it like that. Yeah, scale it down, and you can have like little bits of fur sticking out over the body of your character here and there. And I'm just doing this randomly, so it kind of looks like it's on fire or something with this exact texture that I'm using now. But let's say we want to put it like somewhere in the hair. I might bring back the hat soon. Do something like this. Make sure it's in there, and you could move some of these vertices down. It's gonna move the hair, and actually I'm gonna put in some resolution now, because I want to grab this, and then I want to grab these. I'll put on soft selection, and then I'm just gonna move it around the back like that. Grab this and just move it down here a bit. Actually, I'll just grab this, and I'll put in another edge around here to give it some more curvature, and fiddle around with it a little bit. And we've got this very like Beethoven cow or scarecrow cow, because it's like, it looks a bit like hay. I could probably like fix the color on this a little, and you can then duplicate it, like move it around a bit, rotate it, change the shape. And making hair is a very time-consuming process. Like, you have to be careful. You have to like plan and think what you're gonna be doing and how you're gonna make it look. I have an idea of what I'm doing at the moment, so you know, it's hopefully not gonna look super terrible in a sec. If I had more of these, I would like put different ones on top of each other and do different stuff, and eventually you have like a head of hair. like this guy can eventually look like a total rocker because of the way that we can do the hair. And when you're texturing the cow itself, this area of the head where you're putting the hair, you could actually make it the same color as the hair, and you get like a better result of it will start looking more natural and stuff like that. Make sure you don't select the wrong thingies. I don't think we need this here anymore. Put this, actually let's do this, let's just put one here. Da, 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 like that. Something like this. Okay, this one, well, let's give it some res this way, and that means we can raise these ones to look a bit rounder. You can grab this, move it in and down, and you can see how, because our UVs are staying the same, the texture is changing with the plane, because I'm moving the plane but I'm not moving the UVs. The UVs are where they were before. Just need to be kind of careful because it's sometimes hard to see the mesh when you're using alphas. And like, I don't exactly like how it's going right now because, well, I'm using only one of my hair cards and I'm trying to do it a bit quickly so you're not here for 3 hours. But you can get some really nice results with hair cards. It's just, a lot of it is about thinking about what you want it to look like whilst you're doing it, trying to think like, oh, can I, you know, constantly evaluating it, be like, can I make it better? What parts can I change to make it look better and stuff like that? Or like, what am I trying to make it look like and all that stuff. So let me like duplicate this, group it, -1, get a couple here, and now I think I'm gonna bring back the hat, which I don't know, I don't remember where it was. Man, this looks messy. It's because this is open. Where was the hat? Was it in here? In here? No. New one, wasn't it? And then that's the bell, glasses, mustache. I don't remember. Ah, maybe down here. Nope, those are the hairs. Ah, there we go. It's gonna be one of these, isn't it? Well, that's pretty great, isn't it? The beanie. The beanie that looks very suspiciously like something else. And you get this hat and you can start like, it looks alright. It's not the worst. He looks a bit balding, right? So I would put a few of these smaller ones and different ones. I would kind of like put around the front to kind of make it more, you know, a fuller head of hair. And down here where these are clipping through, you can easily just push those down so they're not visible. And that will solve that problem quite easily. Well, hopefully without changing the look of it too much. There's still one poking through. Or are these the other? These are the front ones. Yeah, these are the front ones. Oops. Okay, I'll push those down through the hat. That's still fine. And now we have this, and this is fine, right? And you can, and this isn't even done. It's not even done carefully. You guys can do way better than this. The only thing that you guys might find a little trickier is actually creating these hair textures. But hopefully I've kind of shown you a good process to do it. And the process was, you know, you draw them out, you draw them out, you use the lasso tool or whatever is easiest to you to like outline them, and you can use that outline to create a mask inside a group, and you put a solid white color in that mask, and you can then like feather the mask itself. You can add a color, solid color if you wish, but even before you do anything else, this is ready for your alpha, and you can even start making your hair from there. But if you wanted to add a texture, you can just add a solid color, start painting like softly where some of the like other main color is gonna be. On top of that, you can put these like hair brush strokes of you know, creating, essentially taking this soft round pressure opacity brush and increasing its hardness quite a bit, and then you can, like, when you use, I'm using a mouse at the moment, when you use a pen you can get like these nice nice thingies there, nice lines, and after that you can add shadowing, and the shadowing layer is set to overlay, and it's just like a darker color, a much darker color. I think it was like down here somewhere, and just putting in shadows where like things are close together, how you want to make them look like they're close together, and you can get a texture like this. But again, if you don't want to do that, if you're very uncomfortable painting, or if you don't have any of the software, you don't have Photoshop, you don't have Krita, you don't have anything like that, even Paint, please don't use Paint, please find something else, then, you know, this is still fine. And you can use this, and you can start making your cards in Maya by just creating a plane, using your multi-cut, cutting it, adding some divisions, and then you know, moving your pivot point to where you want it to be, and then, you know, start molding it around the hair. And I think that's going to give you guys a nice result. It might be difficult to do certain parts like body hair, like we had in our reference, so until you texture your character's body, it might be difficult to make that sort of hair. But anything for the head, anything for down here, mustache, etc., even for the tail, for hair sticking out of the hooves, and stuff like that, like, you can do all of that stuff, and I think you should be able to get some cool results, and I look forward to seeing what you guys and girls and everyone else, everything in between, get up to, and what you end up having. So hope that helps, and I think I'll move on to the bonus bit about how to model a few more things. But if you don't want that, that's it for me, and I'll see you next time. And switch. Okay, so let's model some extra bits. The only things I kind of want to show are, I think someone was asking for skull and wings. So for a skull, if you want to kind of make it so that there's, let's unhide these, all these cylinders, there we go. So let's say that you have a bunch of, for whatever reason you're making a skull, right? So I'm going to try and show you how you could kind of make a stylized skull really easily without having to like go to ZBrush or like get really confused and stuff. So let's just start with a little cube, and let's give it a cut down the middle, and then let's give it some edges like that, and all of these tools are in mesh tools, right? And then I want to give it one down the front like this, right? And then I'm going to extrude this little front part downwards, and this is going to be like part of the jaw for the skull, kind of like literally a skull shape, right? Now I want to have a pointy bit for the cheekbones, so I'm going to make this, and then this cheekbone part I'm going to pull out sideways, and you have a skull there. Actually, let me pull this inwards. Let's put one in the middle, that will work. And then pull this out sideways. Okay, let's start. Move this forwards. And part of me kind of wants to move these as well a little bit. Right? And this jaw, it doesn't have a jaw, does it? So we can kind of just move something up like this. We can add a little edge here. Move this forwards, and these bits, they look a bit weird right now, so we're gonna grab this whole section, and apart from the backs, yeah, that should be okay. And let's try moving that backwards, right? Oops, something's not right. Oh, this is moved sideways for some reason. Oh, we need to be in world mode, excuse me, I've been moving in the wrong mode. Let's straighten this out. Yeah, that's okay, right? Now let's move this front part backwards or downwards rather, like this, to make the skull rounder. So this is essentially box modeling. I'm just box modeling a skull, modeling a skull from a box, right? But this might be useful for you to see where different details are, because I know how a skull looks, I know how it's made, so it's easier for me to kind of plan how I want to model it. Whereas for you, it might be more difficult because it's like the anatomy of the skull and all that stuff may be holding you back from actually figuring out an easy way to make one. So all this stuff about anatomy and knowing and looking at reference and learning about how things work, it's useful because it gives you a chance to you know, come up with your own workflows, come up with your own ways of doing things. A lot of the teaching that I'm doing is around workflows that I have and I know or that are used in the industry. And you know, some of those I've just come up with myself that work effectively for me, and work effectively generally. And those workflows are as a result of me either doing some research on how stuff works, or you know, just experience, or just things I've learned from other people and other artists. So research is very valuable. And that's the only reason I can make this skull. And I'm totally freestyling this, by the way. Like, I've never made this kind of skull before, like in this sort of style. But because I know how a skull works, I'm able to kind of give this a go, and kind of plan out how to do it. Which is usually a lot more difficult. Now this doesn't look too good down here. Something about it's bothering me. Something about these like cheekbones are too exaggerated. I wanted to exaggerate the cheekbones and I've made them too exaggerated, I think. So I need to pull them back a bit. And yeah, that's a bit better. They were just way too strong. Let's pull it like this, make a nice curve. These ones maybe a little rounder. And these ones maybe a little lower down. It kind of looks like a tree. It's just like a very basic tree shape in a way. Now we need a few things we can do here. We can put something here, and then we could grab these two bits and push them back. And we have like the skull kind of brow. And then we need the eyes, which we can make in here. So I'm going to grab each of these vertices and extrude them, and it's going to make this absolute terrifying thing. So the length I'm going to bring back to 0, tap in 0, and the length is going to be like this. So essentially we've kind of created a start for us to then go to faces and just extrude this inwards or delete them depending on what you're doing. So I'm just going to extrude it inwards though. And I didn't even really need to go that far. And I wonder whether there's any reason for me to kind of make this wider. Let's go to component. I wonder. Oops, that didn't work. I'm wondering whether there's any reason to make them bigger for the skull, maybe. But I'm just going to leave them like this for now. And now I'm going to, let's delete all that type history. Gosh, my outliner is so messy now. I think for the nose as well, we need one, don't we? So let's do one for the nose as well. Pinocchio, see you later. And I'm just going to move it back. I'm not even going to extrude or anything like that. And I suppose I didn't even need to do that here, did I? I'm just going to delete these edges in the back that are extruded. Yeah, and that might work a bit better for the skull. And you might notice, oh, but now you have engons. It's like, yes, I have engons now, so I do have to fix those. And I think, luckily, I might be able to connect them between each other, a lot of them, like this. And just this one is gonna have to maybe go down here, like that. Yeah, that might work. This might be all right. Yeah, that should be okay. And for the nose, I need to fix them as well, actually. I wonder if I can, but then you still have one here, don't you? Yeah, I'll just do this. Or this. This might be better. It's a little extra triangle, but it works a bit better. And the reason I want to keep this edge is because this edge is giving me details. If I delete that, I lose that cheek detail, which I want to keep. Okay, so not perfecto, quickly done, but it's roughly a skull shape, right? So there's a lot of other things you can do with this still. You could also turn on your symmetry, world X. Let's make sure he's in the center of the world as well. So the world X works, yep. And you can grab stuff, you can turn on your smooth mode, a lot bigger, and you can kind of deform it and do like different crazy things and stylized things. Let's make him a sad skeleton using our, or actually he's almost smiling now, or she, right? Maybe a bit too wide. World X, please. Thank you. It's working now. Or I thought it was. Okay. So now I'm gonna go to last thing, promise. Have this curve going up and round. So this was very quickly done, but as you saw, I'm just using a sphere. I'm just using a cube, and I'm working with it. That's all I'm doing. And there's more stuff I could do here to make it rounder, to make it work better. But I would leave it for the moment, because you can, this is like good enough, and this may even be more resolution than you need, like honestly. If I delete this and I delete this, if this is like this big, that's probably more resolution than you need if it's that big. If it's like still this big, you know, this is all right, but you know, it's not a lot. It's like 200 bits and there's only one of it. If there was more of it, I'd make a lower poly, but there's only one of them. And arguably you don't even need these eye and nose holes because you can do them in a texture. But I wanted to keep them there just to kind of show you how it can look. And you could even like kind of push this in for where the spine would go. Let's go to mesh display soften edge. And then I'm going to select the edges which I want to harden. So I'm going to, and hopefully World X works this time. Okay, good. So I'm going to select the edges that I want to harden, which are the ones that kind of outline the skull quite well. So it's going to be, I'm going to go all the way down actually here. And we're going to do the brow, and we're going to do this here. And I'm going to do the jaw, which wasn't supposed to be a jaw. It was supposed to be just the upper teeth, but it ended up turning into like something like a jaw. But when you texture, you can make sure these are just upper teeth as well. So you could adjust that. And I think I'll go around the back as well. Okay, so let's harden that. And now we've kind of defined the edges for our skull, right? And you could do like some more stuff here. There we go. Now you're defining the edges. Excuse me. That's very unpleasant to hear in a video, I know. I apologize. But I'm not editing videos, so I can get them up faster. So you're gonna have to deal with my occasional throat clearing. Apologies for that. Something like this. That's all right. Yeah, let's bring it down. And if you wanted to, you could kind of be like, make it a bit rounder in the head department. There we go. Bit better. Bit better. All right, skull, magic, magic. I wonder if I can even just leave it round. Probably not. Yeah, you can even leave it a bit round. I could probably like pull these up so that they maintain that area a bit more, and then I could grab these free and pull them inwards a bit and make a rounder shape. So you could play around with it. Hopefully that gave you some use, and if you want to make like a skull necklace or something, which is what the student who asked for this was going to make, or if you're doing something else, or if ever in the future you want to make a skull in Maya for whatever reason, I recommend ZBrush for making skulls. But sometimes you might not have time, or it might be quicker to just make a simple low poly skull like this. You don't need to go super advanced or super into ZBrush and spend a few hours making a skull. You could make one for like 15 minutes when you get to know how to do it. And the only last thing that I need to cover, and how much recording are we doing? Nearly an hour. Excellent. Last thing is wings. So doing wings is a little tricky because essentially wings have, there's a specific anatomy to wings. Generally speaking, a wing works, if my tablet wakes up, come on tablet, thank you. A wing works like this. You have the shoulder where it starts, and then you have this elbow, right? And then you have the hand. Imagine someone going like, big muscles, right? It's kind of like that. But then instead of the hand sticking out like this, right? Instead of the hand being like, hello, my name is Sam. The hand is almost like pointing this way. It's almost like a half-hearted sideways hello, right? Almost like this is the hand. But the fingers go really far. So the fingers go far. So your hand has like 1, 2, 3 finger pits, right? So it's the same with the wing. The wing has, and I'm gonna undo it so I have more space. Right, so elbow, hand here, and your thumb is kind of like here, and then you have the 3 finger bits. 1, 2, 3. And this is the weird thing about wings. The fingers don't go straight. They bend sideways as well as forwards when you actually flap. So bat wings work this way. And of course bats are mammals. So they have 5 fingers. Now if you wanted to stylize this, then there's skin in between the fingers, kind of like webbed hands, like fish and stuff. So that's kind of how the wing works, right? Now, depending on how much you're stylizing, you might want to actually simplify it quite a bit. So you could simplify it just by having fewer joints in the wing, or fewer wing fingers altogether. So this is stylized because it's reduced in detail. Another way you could do it is you could literally stylize the shape. So if you go super far and super cartoony, Batman wing essentially, which kind of is not the prettiest, and you can kind of incorporate bits of all of that to create something that's stylized but still retains some degree of realism, right? So this is just like arm, elbow, hand, and then just 1 curved joint for the finger, or maybe like 2 curved joints for the finger, and then it connects to each other and connects to, if I get rid of this thing, should have used a different layer. And then it connects to like the body, let's say. So this is another way you could stylize it, but it's important to know the first part. It's important to know how a bat wing works, because stylization is taking bits of reality or aspects of reality and either changing it, playing with it, or simplifying it. That's kind of what this cartoon, what cartoons do, what style does. Everything comes from reality. Nothing just appears. Nothing. It's like where does it come from? It can't come from nowhere. Everything in your head comes from everything you've experienced so far. Some things come about randomly or through random actions. Some things just are spontaneous, but all of those things are still influenced from what you're doing at the time, what you did before. Like everything comes from reality in some way. So if you're thinking like, oh, but like in my head I could just like I know what a wing looks like from in my head, and I'll use my imagination and I'll do something like this, you know, that's still fine, but it's important to know that that didn't come from nowhere. Like it's not in your imagination from nowhere. You didn't create it without any influence from anywhere else. You probably either something you've seen, something you've thought about, something you know, there's something that came from it. You know, there's something that reminds. So, for instance, I just drew this super half-heartedly. It kind of looks like a ghost shape. It reminds you of kind of like old cartoon succubus or old cartoon Betty Boop kind of stuff like this. I don't know why that's where this came from. And also, it kind of looks like a dinosaur as well, which is interesting. And you're like, why the hell is that important? Well, dinosaur teeth are intimidating, and I made this sharp, and now you have a sharp wing that looks intimidating. So, you know, I just sketched this super casually, super quickly, without thinking about it, but my visual library, the thing in my head that makes me draw a certain way, has been influenced from things I've done and seen in the past. So, what I'm trying to say is, you know, think about reality as well. Like if you don't yet have an attunement and a realization or consciousness of your own influences, it's difficult, or just haven't had enough influences yet, it's difficult to have your own style. And some of you might be, you know, more comfortable with drawing your own personal way than others, or working your own personal way. But if you don't remember or understand your past influences yet, use reality as a starting point, because that's where everything started. So that's a long-winded way to say realistic batwing and stylized batwing, right? Came from the same source, simplified or stylized in a certain way, and you could make it that way. Oh man, I need to model this as well, don't I? So okay, let's just model this quickly, because now we know how to make it. I can kind of block it out for myself first using like spheres. I can kind of, so what was it? We're making this one, isn't it? We're making this one. So down, up, and around. Let's go to Maya. So this is gonna go down, up, and then it's gonna go around. So I'm just gonna get a cylinder or something, and I would do this by extracting a shape from the body or something, or maybe I'll just connect it to the body afterwards. But let's create a cylinder, bring it up here, and start from, and I'll reduce the resolution of the cylinder either from the start or later, but I'm kind of rushing it because this video became long and I just went on a ramble about art style and wings, which was not planned. Let's scale this up so it reaches our area, right? And then there's a few different ways we could do this part. You could just grab these faces and then extrude them. Let's do that. Then I'm going to rotate them to face upwards, and I'm going to move them here ish. And then this area you could insert edges, and then you could select this loop, put your pivot point here, here, and bear in mind this might break your pivot point because Maya has an error this year, so you might have to restart after. You can expand it, and now you have a curve. And you can then grab this, to faces, extract or extrude, bring it all, oops, Jesus. Let's try that again. All right, see my pivot point is now broken, excellent. And you have this, and I could again now curve it, or something that might work better is make this smaller and rotate it this way a little bit, and notice it like makes it a bit weird when I rotate, so you could like add another gosh darn it, add another loop here, and modify center pivot. Gosh darn it, my bug is the pivot bug is really annoying. So you could put this here, and now you could grab your curve and you could hold V and click here. So if you hold V, it's going to snap it to the vertice, and then you could essentially look at it from the front. This is the top, where's the front? Here. And you could just kind of create a wing shape, and this is a bit bigger than I wanted actually. Let me put it, the thingy in here, right? Top, like this, and now I could simply grab this wing, grab these faces, grab the curve, and you could extrude it, right, and increase the divisions. And there was a way to make it taper. That's what I want, taper, and then you can taper it, so it becomes this, and now you have this sharp wing. And cool thing, before you do anything else, before you delete your history, select the curve again, right click, control vertex, and you can still move them around, move the vertices of the curve around, which will actually change the wing itself. So you could grab the very bottom one, increase your smooth selection, and like make a movement of the wing to make it like go around a more interesting way. And you could do something like this, and then you could like delete these guides that you've given yourself. You could edit, delete all by type history, and you could even use a plane. So you could create a plane, and let's do this. Let's duplicate this so we have a copy, and hide our original, right? And go back to our copy, and I'm going to select this face all the way around, so up to here and then all the way down here, right? So it's selected it all the way around. I'm gonna shift drag and select everything else because I don't want anything else except that I selected. And I'm gonna get rid of these little things at the end because I know they're gonna be here, right? And now this, I can select the faces, right? And let's bring back our previous one. So we can select the faces on this, and we can literally just extrude and just pull it out and try and get a wing shape that way. Or how could we do it? Because we're getting an error up here. Let's just do it and fix the error afterwards. Let's just do something like this, right? And then let's select the end here and the end there. And let's delete the back. Or actually, let's delete everything except this part. Now we have this, and here we have this error, so we can just combine these points to fix the error. We have this, and we want this to have a few more areas here where it can connect with each other, right? We can bridge those, we can bridge these ones, bridge these ones, bridge these ones, this one, and we'll see what we do about these ones, but we could do something like that. Let's go down here, bridge, and then we can go, maybe we should get rid of this one actually. And we can bridge that, and then we could bridge this one, or maybe we should bridge that one, yeah, like that, and then we'll put in an edge loop here. This got interesting. I'm sorry, I really hope this isn't like totally not useful, but it's interesting to think of what we can do here, because after we've done this, essentially, and you could figure out how to like connect this to the rest of the body. You could even like probably like just extrude this out this direction. Take off World X. Put this out in this direction and like connect it. So this could be like down here. You shouldn't have to move the pivot point off to the side. I would usually just restart Maya and make sure the pivot point works again. But I just didn't want to stall. Right, so then you can make yourself essentially a wing skin, and then we can use the same technique we used for our hair to create the wing skin to have this webbed effect, to have this happen. So we don't have to model this. We could do it the same way we did the hair, Oops. We can do it the same way we did the hair on here. So however you choose to make your wings, if you have multiple fingers, you just wouldn't connect it here. You would keep them separate and they'd connect to something else. You would keep the fingers separate. You could make straight fingers as well, which might be easier than using a curve. But if you want to make skin between the wings, I would keep it like, keep it a flat shape, because you can just use the technique you used for the hair to create the texture for the wing that's gonna have an alpha and be pointy. So, take a breath. That's it. That's all I'm gonna show you for now. I'm not gonna do feather wings because that's a whole nother bucket of fish, but pretty much it would be the same thing. You just follow a bird's anatomy and then you would create the feathers from the same technique you could do with leaves and hair cards. Hope that helped, and I'll see you guys in the lecture.